look, we should not be, taking away states' ability to regulate AI if we ourselves don't even have a bill in place talking about the rules of the road.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle, and I'm joined today by congressional reporter Samantha-Jo Roth. SJ, this reconciliation bill is headed to the Senate. Some changes might be in order from the House-passed version. You've written about the school choice component to the bill. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so there's been a big push, especially since Republicans control both chambers of Congress. They feel that this is really, the optimal time for them to move forward with school choice legislation. So they basically slipped this into the reconciliation bill. It would allow tax breaks for those who are, contributing money to these charter schools and school choice. And so that's like a big step forward. Obviously, there's other bills that they're also considering, but this is something that Republicans, including President Donald Trump, has really, promised to do. The big question is, will it actually make it into the final bill? There's a lot of questions about that, and I think the Byrd rule, which is basically if anything is put into this bill that does not have to do with like financial matters,
right,
or subject matters that have nothing to do with this issue, a lot of times the parliamentarian actually strips that out. So there is questions about what the, if this is actually going to make it.
It has to be something that could really be done through reconciliation.
Exactly.
It has to be a budget thing.
Exactly. So there are questions about whether this is going to make it through, but, obviously this is a major Republican priority.
So one thing that might change has to do with AI. Now, AI is obviously not writing this bill, or maybe it is, I don't know, ChatGPT, but what is the regulatory change that they're talking about?
So basically what they want to do is they want to, not allow these states to form their own AI kind of regulations. And the reason for this is that, Republicans really want to allow industry to really make their own decisions. They feel like, if Meta, if OpenAI, if all of these different organizations are going to have to, deal with a patchwork of 50 different states and laws, that's going to be, a barrier to innovation. The other side is that it would allow a lot of these companies to exploit its customers without any kind of legislation or rules of the road. We know how hard it is for lawmakers to get through a piece of legislation in Congress. So there are even some Republicans who are sounding the alarm, who are saying, look, we should not be, taking away states' ability to regulate AI if we ourselves don't even have a bill in place talking about the rules of the road.
So Arizona's been a battleground state for a bit, was important in the presidential election last year, went pretty well for Democrats in the 2022 midterm elections. How are things looking for 2026?
There is a lot of concern among Democrats that I'm speaking with about the governor, Katie Hobbs, and her ability to stay in the governor's seat.
And that was a close race the last time.
Oh yeah, very close. And also we have some, other really top races like the Secretary of State as well as the State Attorney General, which was an extremely close race as well. So, there's a lot of frustration in the Democratic Party in Arizona. There's been some internal squabbles among the state's chairman. There's also been some concern that Katie Hobbs herself is just not a strong candidate. There was recent polling that recently came out that showed, when compared to other Democrats, rather, in the state, like Ruben Gallego and Mark Kelly, her favorability numbers are just not the same. So, there is an open question about whether, a Republican is going to be strong enough to take back the governor's seat. I will say that a lot of Republicans and even Democrats that I've spoken with in the state say, Arizona is still a conservative state. It is not a purple state. It is not a Democratic state, despite the fact that there are two Democrats that are representing it in the Senate.
Right.
And when given a moderate, middle-of-the-road choice, Arizonans typically do choose that. So the big question is the Republican primary there, and whether the state's going to nominate, the Republicans of the state are going to nominate someone who is more middle of the road, like Karen Taylor Robeson, or far to the right, like Andy Biggs, and that's an open question. It's going to be an interesting race to watch, especially since President Trump has endorsed both of those candidates.
And he won Arizona in November last year.
Yes.
You mentioned the divisions in the Democratic Party. Arizona has had a lot of problems on the Republican side because of divisions in the Republican Party, a lot of infighting with people loyal to former Senator John McCain, the late John McCain. You mentioned the conservative wing of the parties they've sometimes won the primaries, have had trouble getting over the finish line in the general election. Are there concerns about divisions on that side of the aisle as well?
On Republicans?
Yes.
I think there are some concerns. I think when you talk to some Republicans in the state, they would obviously prefer that they coalesce around one candidate, just so that candidate is then strong enough to take on the incumbent, Katie Hobbs. But I think the same kind of issues that they were having, the internal state party squabbles over fundraising and how the party is run, I don't think those are the same kinds of squabbles that they're having today. But I mean, we're going to have to go a little further into the primary season to see how this goes, because obviously, typically in the beginning, it all seems well, but as we get closer to a primary, it could get a little bit more ugly.
Thank you, SJ.
Thank you.
You can read Samantha-Jo and the rest of our political team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.